Hello and welcome to Odds Premier League match day 4 after the international break. We have Liverpool on top, and on top of that, they signed Isak in the last day of the transfer market. And also, before the break, we had Nuno Espiritu Santo at the Nottingham Forest bench, but he's gone. Tom, did you enjoy that Liverpool Arsenal? I didn't.
No, look, I didn't enjoy it in terms of entertainment value, but I think in terms of the season and what it's going to mean, I think it was a really important game of football. So it's not one I'm going to watch back in full, but it is one we should all remember in, say, 30 weeks' time when we're going down the home straight and Arsenal are 6 points behind. The reason they won't win the league again is because they don't win games like that.
Exactly. It should have been a draw, probably, but they lost it. Well, a lot to analyze. We have the Manchester Derby in this match day 4, so I'm looking forward to listening to Tom's tips. Also, guys, as always, I encourage you to post your tips in this channel and, of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And the big news in this international break is the departure of Nuno Espiritu Santo from Nottingham Forest and problems with the owner. And now Ante Postecoglou arrived opposite Styles. I'm surprised, actually, to see Postecoglou on the bench. It's difficult to find a more different manager than Nuno Espiritu Santo than Postecoglou. And the first game is at the Emirates, so it's not going to be easy, with Arsenal looking forward to scoring plenty of goals after that defeat against Liverpool. Probably, Tom, they were better in the first half, but they didn't push enough. They didn't serve balls to Gyökeres, and at the end, it was just a beauty from 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝗏. As you said, perhaps in the final weeks of this season, they might think, if we had won that game at Anfield, things might be different.
Yeah, look, it's early in the season for us to say that, right? And people watching this might be saying it's September, the game was August, you can't say that. Well, look, these teams are going to lose maximum, to my mind, 5 games apiece. And they kind of have to beat each other in order to be champion. And so I think it's actually really consequential, this game a couple of weeks ago. And I keep thinking about the wrestler Ric Flair. I've said this to you before. If you're going to be the man, you've got to beat the man. Whoa. And they didn't do it again. And I think it might cost them in the end. Look, Arsenal are the near perfect version of what Mikel Arteta has been driving at for 6 odd years. But I do think he has been hamstrung by injuries again, going into the first few weeks of the season, to not have Kai Havertz to rotate with 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿. We don't know how bad the Saliba injury is. Bukayo Saka is going to be out for another couple of weeks at least. Don't know how Ben White is getting on. Can't really count on 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝐻𝐿 anymore. So there are problems there, legitimate problems that, look, it's a bit of fun to sort of criticize Arsenal and whatnot. But like, those are, again, legitimate problems. Again, there is an injury backlog. And again, tactically in a big game, they weren't daring enough. And I think that matters. They didn't try to beat Liverpool. They tried to hold on, keep it tight, and nick a winner on the counter. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's what like Forest do. And it's what West Ham have done in recent years, and Newcastle did before they had investment in the squad. You know, it's what the underdog does, and that's fine. But they've spent billion across the Arteta era, like 700 million or something on players. Another huge spending summer this summer. Got to go toe-to-toe. Couldn't do it. Lost the game. C'est la vie. I don't think it matters so much in this game. And we'll get to Forest because I think that's the significant part of this match. But I think it's a big game for 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿. I think it's a big game for 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝐿. Played okay for England a couple of days ago, but you know, he's in the Saka role now, so he's getting to play where he actually wants to play. It's a big day for 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿. I think he'll get his first start for Arsenal. So it's a big day for the Arsenal offense to prove that they can give someone a hiding, frankly, and score lots of goals and have a lot of confidence that they haven't had in the first couple of weeks of the season. And that leads me to Forest, who, to go back to your earlier point, I can't believe this change. Like, I get the Nuno thing became untenable when he publicly criticised Mr. Marianakis, right? At that point, he was never going to last there. Most clubs, you can't criticise the owner or the ownership publicly, especially not this one. And so he was always going to go. And in the end, it's irrelevant. Was it a row with Marinakis? Was it with Edu? Was it all of them? Was it Edu pushing it? It doesn't matter in the end. What matters is Nuno has gone and Ange Postecoglou has come in. Postecoglou can coach a pragmatic style. You know how we know that? Tottenham in the Europa League final. He can do it. He is able to do it. I think about, was it Brentford last year for Tottenham? He coached a very pragmatic style in the game and they won it. So he can do it. The thing is with this Forest team, it's the only thing they've done for 18 months. They are not expansive. They are not particularly high press. They are low block and counter punch. That's what they do. The press occasionally happens when a team is mucking around with it in their own box, but that is not necessarily the style. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how they've taken on anything from Postecoglou over the last few days. I think that's probably unlikely. So hopefully he will go with a Nuno tactic, low block, counter punch. I think there might be a bit of an issue here with Nottingham Forest moving forward. But in this particular weekend, if he just continues the Nuno thing, I think they'll probably be okay. So I still think it'll be reasonably tight. I think it'll be, you've got to imagine it's like it's a Nuno game. We're about 5 or 6 weeks away from kind of being a bit Postecoglou-y. So go for the Arsenal win at 1.4. You're obviously going to do that for them to be at home. I'm struggling again to see Arsenal conceding many goals this season. So them to win to 0 brings you to 2.2. It's a very common scoreline. They're defensively very strong. And even if Saliba is missing, I like the look of Mosquera. I think that could still work and will still work for Arsenal. I would then look at Arsenal winning by a few score lines. The group bet is not great for this, but 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 is 2.63. Again, just covers you a little bit more for a couple more score lines and throws in the win to 0 as well. And again, if Arsenal are going to score a goal, how are they going to do it? It's going to be a corner. Who takes the corners? Declan Rice. Declan Rice assist is 3.25. Double up a couple of them, you make some money. And we'll just have to see how Forest get on over the next few weeks.
Good one. Someone was suggesting also Eze to assist. Many people expected him to be in the lineup against Liverpool.
Why wasn't
he? Came from the bench. Arsenal over 1.5 goals, conservative. Nottingham Forest Asian handicap plus 1.75, so they don't get thrashed. Nuts. I can see an upset against Forest. I cannot, to be honest. I can see Arsenal winning this game. And talking about upsets, Bournemouth Brighton is the next game. And why I say that? Because they were the protagonists of the biggest surprise of last match day. Bournemouth beating Tottenham, Brighton beating Man City, and both were quite unlikely. Bournemouth taking the lead very early, and we know they had some defensive problems, but they didn't suffer at the Tottenham ground. And Brighton, they were second best against City for many, many minutes, but this is what great coaches can do. Hurseler made 4 changes at the 60th minute of the game, and he completely changed the game to beat City. So really good start for both teams with those wins, Tom.
Yeah, both picking up from where they were last season, right? Both well coached and both well drilled and both have game plans and they can update those game plans in matches. I think Bournemouth very impressive, even more so than Brighton, considering the sales they've had this summer. I think that the game against Tottenham, it's funny, the week before, Tottenham put in the perfect away performance at Man City. A week later, Bournemouth put in the perfect away performance at Tottenham, which was close the game down. They should have won it by more goals. They had so many shots in that game. Tottenham had a real off day, which we'll get to later. But the midfield balance of Scott Adams and Tavernier is fantastic. Semenyo is maybe one of the best players in the league, which I feel like I said all year last year, and I'll continue to say it. I still have my concerns about the defense. I know it was a good performance against Spurs, but Marcos Senesi, who was, for me, probably the best player on the field on the day, I struggle with seeing him playing all season, centre half for Bournemouth. I think Smith at fullback can be got at. I think Truffert on the left-hand side has looked good going forward. First couple of weeks, I've not really had the chance to assess him too much defensively, but certainly offensively been good. So, look, I think Bournemouth are a very good outfit. And I think that if they are able to execute what the coach wants, they'll pretty much win every game because the coach is just a great reader of the game, Iriota. He's proved that to English football fans as he had to Spanish football fans over the last kind of 4 or 5 seasons, right? He is a man who can read a game brilliantly well and adapt in game. He can be ultra attacking one week and ultra defensive next week. And what he's got, maybe because of the club he's at and the sort of players he's got, is disciples who will follow anything that he says. And you see that in games like against Bournemouth. So that makes them tough opponent. I think it's similar but different at Brighton. I don't think they're 𝗀𝗏𝗄 disciples in the same way Bournemouth are 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗏 disciples. But I do think, again, very smart manager, able to change the game. You mentioned the 4 changes they made. I think what Brighton know, and I think what 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝗏 knows, is that this is a league all about who's got the most energy. Finesse is second to energy. You got to have the finesse if you're going to win games, as we saw with that amazing winning goal by 𝗀𝗏𝗏 against City. You know, rounding the keeper and putting it in the last minute is not easy. But they also got a bit of luck with the penalty. If that doesn't happen, they have turned the game around. I think the penalty at the exact moment, more or less, the subs happened, gave that huge influx of energy, and City wilted, and Brighton had it. And so that was a great reading of the game by 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝗏. But it does see me just shade for Bournemouth in this game, because I think they're a team that are built in the manager's image, whereas I think Brighton have got someone who's able to read the game really well, as opposed to a defined style. I don't know. That's sort of how I see it. So screams draw, frankly, at 3.63. And then I think you've got to look at the possibility of both teams winning pretty tight games. So if you fancy Bournemouth, under 3.5 goals in a Bournemouth win brings you at 3.5. These two teams do not win games by big margins. 2-1 and 1-0 last time out suggest that. If you fancy Bournemouth to win by exactly 1 goal, you get that at 4.33. Again, really, really nice. And then I'm just going to flip it on its head for Brighton. Brighton under 3.5 is 4, and Brighton by exactly 1 goal is 4.5. This screams 1-1 or 2-1 either way. And if that happens, you're covered in most of those bets. A very tight, very enjoyable game. I would just go for the home team, but we'll see.
Screams draw to me for 𝐿𝐿𝐿 and also Nuts. Too hard to separate these two. I'm going for the draw and some others for Brighton double chance. So it looks like we have some consensus in here. Next game is Crystal Palace, Sunderland, another two teams that have started really well the season. Sunderland winning both home games, last one in the very last minute, and Crystal Palace smashing Aston Villa away 3-0. 5 points is a great start, also considering they've lost some important players. Right now, they are super favorites to win this game, 1.7.
Yeah, and you can see why. Their form across the last 8 months has been incredible. So the last 15 games, incredible. Back end of last and start of this. And the performance against Aston Villa was one team that isn't there yet. One team that isn't set for the season in Villa, and one team that's perfectly set for the season. They've lost to 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝐻, and I know 𝗵𝗏 has come in, but it was 𝐶𝐾𝐿𝐴 who started that game, and I thought he was outstanding in that sort of front left position. Someone who knows Oliver Glasner well and has worked with him previously, and he's able to deliver on whatever the coach wants. I think Adam Wharton being missing in this game is going to be significant. I'm hearing he's injured for this, and will miss maybe another couple of weeks. If that happens, it's Will Hughes and probably 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝐻 with 𝗵𝗏 starting. Hey, that ain't too bad. But it's still not Adam Wharton, who in midfield under pressure is up there with the very best in the league. He's up there with Elliot Anderson, Declan Rice, and one or two others who are able to turn out of trouble and bring the team forward. And so without that, with all due respect to 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝐻 and Hughes, they lose their best midfielder. That could be an issue there. But they're better than Sunderland. They create lots of chances. Mateta started the season well. Sarr started the season well. Munoz and Mitchell bring the energy. The defence looks good. It's all there for Crystal Palace, and they understandably go into it favourites. For Sunderland, I know they've won 2 games, but they weren't great in the games they won. Like, if you care about such things, the stats for the West Ham game, they won convincingly, but the goalkeeper threw 2 in. And if you look at the Brentford game last time out, the winner in the 97th minute, it's straight at Kelleher, the goalkeeper. He doesn't make the save. So I don't think Sunderland have played well, particularly in any of the games this season. I still think they'll get relegated this season. I don't see a particularly strong squad there, despite the sheer amount of money spent. I see a lot of overvalued players, which, to be fair, you have to do. Forest did it, and Sunderland have done it. It's a better way of trying to stay up than what other teams have done. Pitiful sort of like, oh, we're going to go down anyway, Ipswich types have done. So I like it. And I think it's a great roll with the dice, but they haven't played well. They will get found out, and this is going to be one of those games. So look at the Crystal Palace win, 1.7, pretty low. So how else do you manipulate that? I'm struggling to see goals from this Sunderland team, and I think the Burnley game away from home was more like what we're going to get than the Brentford game and the West Ham game. So Palace win to 0 is 2.63. Don't see many goals, but I think Palace will get them. I think 1-0 or 2-0 is most likely. Under 2.5 and a Palace win is 3.5. And Mateta anytime is 2.38. If you go Palace win and Mateta anytime, bundled together, you'll make some money.
Indeed, Mateta to score in the match, according to Patrick. Also, Brian, Palace to win 2-0. Next game is Everton. Aston Villa, really poor start for Aston Villa. You were concerned at the beginning of the season also about the poor market, and indeed only 1 point, and it was a draw against Newcastle, especially concerning the last defeat against Crystal Palace, 3-0 at home. And Everton is the opposite. I think the signing of Grealish might have changed everything. It's 2 wins in this start against Wolves and Brighton, so 6 points is a brilliant start, and they have a new hero, and they also won the first game in this stadium, so they looked favorites for winning the second one.
Yeah, I mean, they were very good in that first home win against Brighton, but I sort of feel like I'm not yet convinced on the performances of Everton, despite the results they've been getting. I think the back line still looks slow in Keane, Tarkowski, O'Brien, and it would have been 𝐿𝐿enko in the last game. I still think the midfield looks light with would have been James Garner and 𝗲𝗏𝗏 Garner Gay in midfield. I like 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏, I like 𝗀𝐿𝐴, I like Grealish. I think that 3 is really good. The rest of the team, I'd have my concerns. And even though Beto scored, I think the opener against Wolves last time out, I still don't think he's a prolific Premier League striker. And Barry, who comes to replace him, is amazing. So, look, still issues there with Everton. I don't think they'll be relegated this season. I don't think they'll be in the relegation battle. But I think all this talk of top 10, top 8, European qualification, blah, 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 I think that's for the birds. I think that's too far. But look, Grealish been fantastic. Another couple of assists for him in the game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He's been desperate to play for a long, long time to show what he's worth. And David Moyes is able to get performances from Mavericks. He's been able to do it his entire career. He did it at Everton, did it at West Ham, doing it again back at Everton. I'm very pleased for Jack Grealish, and I think he'll probably be the difference maker here. In terms of Villa, that sometimes a club gets a feel, and I think there's a feel around Villa right now that they were moving in the right direction, they were on the right track, and it's a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show, as the old saying goes. We're now into the following year, and they needed a bit of a shot in the arm to just keep the momentum going. And they haven't really had that. The transfer window was very poor. They had to sell players. And, you know, of the January signings, Asensio went, Rashford went, and the one that was permanent was Marlon. And he's not good enough, frankly. Marlon's not a Premier League player, not an Aston Villa player, not a starter. He's one of those guys who's going to spend his entire career coming off the bench. Lucas Moura type or whatever. And he's starting games. No surprise to me. He was dreadful and taken off against Crystal Palace. It's not the league for him. You're building a lot on the abilities of Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins having a bit of a struggle at the start of the season. Morgan Rogers had a real poor game against Crystal Palace. When you bundle people into him, as Palace did so well, Kamada kind of followed him around. To my eye, I thought they shut him down. So concerns about Villa at the moment. They're not looking defensively strong. They're not looking offensively good. And they're losing games kind of with a bit of a whimper. And why would I say that's going to not continue here? I see no signs of it so far. So take the Everton win at 2.55. Then look at your Jack Grealish market, who's been fantastic. Him to score or assist at a double is 2.63. Just a Grealish assist, remember 2 in the last game, is 4. And then look at some score lines here. 1-0 is 8. 2-0 is 12. Everton win to 0 is 4.33. It absolutely screams 1 or 2-0 Everton, with Grealish involved in at least one of the goals. And I'm not fearing for Villa. They're going to go down, but I think it'll be a while before they shake off this bad start.
Well, Everton double chance plus Grealish to score or assist. According to Patrick, Danny is in a big win for Everton, and Brian is in a half-time draw. Well, not looking good this start of the season for Aston Villa. Also for Fulham, no wins, 2 points. Probably they deserved much more against Chelsea. I don't think the first goal should have been disallowed. The one scored by Fulham is kind of a disgrace for football, in my opinion, but still looking for the first win. And Leeds, 4 points, I would say, is a good start. All games, both teams to score, no for Leeds so far.
Yeah, well, look, let's start with Fulham. I agree with you. I think that goal should have counted. I'm not sure it was like the worst decision in Premier League history, like I saw
No.
like in loads of places. I think there's been some pretty bad decisions over the years. I think there was an argument to say there's a reckless landing, whatever, blah blah blah. Like I wouldn't have disallowed it, but I don't think it was sort of that bad. Pull your hair out, sort of stuff. Apology next day, but there we go. I think it did ruin Fulham's momentum in the match, and I think that they haven't got much possibility to rotate. They did not have an amazing transfer window, and there wasn't a great deal of investment certainly going into that game. And that could potentially be a problem for Fulham moving forward. The squad is not particularly deep, but if the first team is together and there aren't any injuries, they'll be fine this season. I think Anderson and 𝗵𝗲𝗄 have looked great at the back. 𝗵𝗲𝗄, his improvement has been incredible. I really didn't see that coming. I didn't rate him at all maybe 18 months ago, but he's really, really improved, I think, and been very, very good. I think if Anthony Robinson is fit, he comes in for Sessegnon, gives him a better balance. And I think Josh King in midfield has been great. And if Emile Smith-Rowe can get fit, like really fit, and play 70 minutes of football, they've got a great pairing there in that number 10 sort of creative role to replace the loss of Pereira, who's left the club and sort of brought it to him a lot. Plus, 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗲's been fantastic as well. So, look, loads of great positives around Fulham. But you've got to win games like this. If you win games like this, you're going to have a good season. If you beat the bottom 6 at home, you're going to have a good season. That's a general rule of thumb. And Leeds will be bottom 6. No doubt about that in my mind. I think they'll be bottom 3, never mind bottom 6. I don't see much of a Premier League squad here. I worked on the Newcastle game 2 weeks ago, and this is the first time I thought about it since, and it's making me sick just going back to that day. Just an awful, awful game of football. I think that there's a lack of guile about Leeds. I think the midfield of Longstaff, 𝗀𝗄𝗄 and Stark is going to be hard-working, but there's not much in it. And if Gnonto doesn't do anything, what else you got? And there's not much really in the locker, I don't think, creatively for Leeds United. Defensively, Pascal Struijk, already fouled at the Premier League, surprised to see him still there. And Jayden Bogle. I mean, look, it's a championship squad with 1 or 2 potential bottom half Premier League players next season. I think they'll struggle. I think they'll lose this game. And I think they'll be relegated this season with less than 25 points. So I'll take the Fulham win at 2. That's actually getting a little bit better. I think they'll win quite comfortably and quite convincingly. And there's a really lovely little group bet here of 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0. That comes in at 3.5. Can't see Leeds scoring. I think Fulham win it comfortably, frankly.
Well, Sun Tzu or Marco are seeing 2-1 for Fulham. Also, 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, Fulham wins this one. Next one is Newcastle Wolves. Also, Newcastle looking for their first win of the season. Now the Isak problem is gone because he's gone, and we have 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 instead. And remember, they are playing Champions League. They are facing Barcelona. On Thursday, the only home game they've played so far was a good 2-3 against Liverpool. Remember, they were playing down to 10 men, and they were this close to get a point at least. And Wolves, so far, they are the poorest team in the Premier League. 0 points, 8 goals conceded, looking really, really bad.
Yeah, Wolves are going to struggle. We all knew that at the start, and they'll go on a run at some point this season, I'm sure, but I don't think it starts this week. Newcastle not been great, back end of last season, start of this, they are really, really struggling to find wins, and I think the Isak story has certainly affected them first couple of weeks of the campaign, but back end of last season, they sort of stumbled over the line to Champions League in the end after being fantastic going into like game week 33, something like that. Went to 5 at the back in that dreadful game against Leeds. That, again, utterly unwatchable. I don't think they'll continue that now they've got some strikers in. I think they lacked an out ball without Isak in the last game, so I expect 𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐵𝐴 to come straight in. I expect 𝗀𝗲𝗏 to come straight in, and a front 3 of 𝗀𝗲𝗏, 𝗀𝗏, and probably Murphy, I guess. Maybe Gordon, but Murphy's been fantastic, I think, of the 3 at the start of the season. Gordon struggled. I was surprised to see him start for England, and Harvey Barnes has struggled. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents. It may well be Elanga, I don't know. But I think Murphy's probably the best of the group. That'd be my 3. And if you bought 𝗀𝗏 for that sort of money, you've got to put him in. 𝗀𝗲𝗏, you need the striker. You've got to get him to play. So I expect a whole new vibe for the Newcastle front line in this game. And going back to that familiar 4 at the back shape as well. No, Joelinton is a keen loss for them in central midfield. As good as I think Jacob Ramsey is, he's not the powerhouse that Joelinton is in midfield. So that's a problem. In terms of Wolverhampton Wanderers, they're defensively very weak. Very, very weak. The 3 at the back of Bueno, 𝗀𝗏𝗏, and 𝐵𝗏𝗏 is not good enough to to stay in the Premier League, conceding a couple of goals every game. Going forward, good to have kept Jakob Strand-Larsen, who was a long-time target for Newcastle this summer. But beyond him, not much goal-scoring threat. I know Hwang scored in the last game, but he's a bit part player at best these days. Arias looks fast. That's some hope there. If he gets some football and gets running, they added some pace to their team. But in midfield, Andre and Gomez, the two Gomez boys, very slow. I think they're a streaky team, Wolves, and they're currently out of streak, and I think they'll get beaten in this game, and I think they'll be bottom four. I think it'll be the three that came up, and Wolves in the bottom four come the end of the season. Newcastle win, massive favourites, 1.48, obviously. I think it'll be quite narrow, only because Newcastle have struggled for wins for so long. I think that first win isn't going to be a thrashing. It's going to be a tiptoe over the line, and the odds for that are really good. And I found this, Newcastle went under 1.5 goals, so essentially, right, 1-0, is 7. I was really surprised by that. You can do 1-0 as well at the same odds, but that was really surprising. It really screams 1-0 victory for me. You want to cover your bases and go for 2 as well. Under 2.5 goals is 3.75. I just think a really narrow Newcastle win here. I can't see it being anything else at the moment.
Okay, correct score, Moyoma, 2-1, Newcastle to win, and both teams to score 2-0 for Sun Tzu. And Patrick is telling us that, and I agree completely, that that Newcastle needed the Isak saga to be finished, so now they can focus. The market is over. They don't have Isak, but they have instead 𝐬𝐴. Let's see what they can do this season. Later on, we have a derby, West Ham Tottenham, surprising last match day for both of them, because West Ham bounced back with a convincing win against Forest 3-0, and Lucas Paquetá looking better and better also in the first game with Brazil. And the Spurs is the opposite after surprising us in the first 2 match days. Now against a low block, conceding early, like Bournemouth, they couldn't create any chances. Actually, it's not that they lost, it's that they didn't create any chances. So I guess West Ham should know how to play this Tottenham.
Well, they do, because I have no idea what's going to happen here. I think of all the teams this season, these are the 2 that I've got wrong the most. Like the first few weeks are always tough, right? Because you haven't really seen anyone. And then after a few weeks, you start getting a vibe of who's good and who's bad and whatnot. Not a clue, honestly, with these 2 teams. West Ham, the first 2 weeks were horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And in the cup game in the midweek, they were pretty poor as well. But then Graham Potter decided to go back to a formation that works, which is 4 at the back. He got rid of Todibo, who's fat and slow and useless. And he brought in, look, I don't care for Mavropanos, but he can defend more than Todibo. Walker-Peters comes in for Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka's been very poor. And suddenly against Forest, there's a great balance. They've got 2 attacking fullbacks. They've got 2 defenders that are just defending. The signing of Fernandes from Southampton, I think, is inspired, because he brings West Ham the thing they were lacking, which is carrying the ball upfield, progressive passing, energy in central midfield. It's been sorely, sorely lacking for the Hammers. And I think he was outstanding against Forest last time out. And you mentioned Lucas Paquetá. Like, he's been really poor. And let's not sugarcoat it here. He's been awful for West Ham for maybe 18 months. And we might say that's for obvious reasons, sure, but he's been playing and not offering anything. And, at West Ham, he's played central midfield, he's played deep lying, he's played right wing, central forward, left wing. They try and find a position for him. The left of a 3 is where he's best, and he can come in and drift and create, and he can make mistakes, and he looks really engaged, and he was outstanding against Forest. And if West Ham go into this game with Fernandes, Paquetá, the brilliant Jarrod Bowen, this defensive line that makes sense, yeah, it's starting to look better. It's starting to look better for West Ham. And if they start playing a bit like the Moyes team did, and Nuno's Forest would have done, they're going to win some games this season, because suddenly there's pace on the counter, and they bring on Somerville for the last 10. You could be in trouble. So that's going to be interesting. The only negative is that Nicholas Füllkrug got injured again. Got injured last year in the August international break, and he missed 4 months. Got away again, August international break, and got injured. Maybe, just sell him, frankly. But if you can't, just stop sending him off to Germany. I don't know. So, look, West Ham, they're tough. But so are Spurs. Amazing against City, as we discussed at length a couple of weeks ago. But equally atrocious against Bournemouth. Couldn't get going. Could not get going. The midfield trio of Palhinha, Bentancur and Sarr might be incredible if the opposition have the ball. But if you've got it, where was the progressive passing against Bournemouth? It wasn't there. Up front, Mohamed Kudus, who'll get very, very well booed in this game. He is not a popular figure at West Ham, Mohamed Kudus, having coasted through last season and then gone to Tottenham. Good luck with that, mate. He occasionally can do something brilliant, but a lot of the time will run down a blind alley and lose the ball. That's what West Ham saw a lot when he was there, and that's what we saw a lot of last week. And even the changes, no one came on and really gave anything. And it was the first sort of sign that there is a lack of guile currently at Tottenham. And that could be an issue. Bentancur is supposed to give it, but he's sort of become a bit more of a sort of box-to-box defensive-minded player. And without Kulusevski, without Maddison, you can see why they wanted Eze. You can see why they wanted him, because someone playing that through ball is currently lacking for Spurs. And I'd still make them slight favourites for this game, but I think it's going to be a tough game to watch. I don't think it's going to be an end-to-end sort of thriller. So, look, it screams draw. These two teams are big rivals. Whatever Spurs might say, it is a huge derby for both. For West Ham, it is probably their biggest derby of the season. The crowd will be up for it, and if the players are up for it, they've got every chance of winning the match. But I think it screams draw at 3.69. Of the two, I would just shade for Tottenham at 2.16, but I think it's going to be pretty tight. We're talking 1-0, 2-1, both teams scoring, and it being quite an energetic game, if not inspiring game, if you see what I mean. It's going to be a battle, drudge sort of game. If you like that sort of game, blood and thunder, this might be it for you. 1-1 is 6.5, and there's two scorers to pick out here. For West Ham, Jarrod Bowen. Since April, no player in the league has had more goal contributions than Jarrod Bowen. Anytime goal scorer, 3.25. And of course, Mohamed Kudus returning to West Ham. Got to look at that. Anytime Kudus, 3.25. But tight game. And West Ham, Tottenham, both teams. Your guess is as good as mine, frankly. Could be anything.
Well, 5 Premier League games on Saturday in London. Actually, this is the East London derby, and people are leaning towards Spurs. Here we can see Steve. We can see Brian also, Spurs winning at 30 minutes, 3.25. We have Sun Tzu, double chance for Tottenham to win or draw. 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 draw is also possible. Good value in there. And from this derby in the east to the west, Brentford, Chelsea, 1.7 for Chelsea to win. I guess we should back them after their good start, beating Fulham, beating West Ham. They got rid of Nico Jackson going to Bayern Munich, and Brentford, they beat Aston Villa in their only game at home. Once upon a time, with Thomas Frank on the bench, they were really tough to beat when they were playing at home, and all the big teams suffer in this stadium. Let's see what happens this season.
Yeah, I mean, the victory over Villa was interesting. I think on the kind of first week of the season, I think Villa were very, very poor. This is the first time a really good opponent has come to the 𝐺TEC, and so we'll see how it goes. But I have a lot of fears about Brentford this season. I think that 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝐿 was appalling in the game against Sunderland. I think he had a really, really bad game. I'm not sure how good a goalkeeper he is. It's a bit of a downgrade on Flekken, and we'll see how that goes. I wasn't a big fan of Flekken. I think defensively, if Nathan Collins goes, I think the rest of the back line would really struggle. And by that, I mean injured. Of course, the transfer window is closed. It's all really relied on his brilliant organisational skills. But they look wobbly big time against a pretty naff Sunderland last week. Midfield is one-paced. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 and Henderson started the last game. Not much movement there. Frank 𝐿𝐴 is back. Not sure his Premier League quality. He's fouled a few times now in the Premier League, and yet he still keeps hanging around Brentford like a bad smell. And that sort of leaves you with a few concerns defensively, a bit wobbly. Midfield lacks a bit of power, and then up front, Thiago scored against Sunderland. That's valuable because I think he needs to get going to replace the goals of Mbeumo and Wissa and previously Tony. So I wish him well, but I think Ouattara, Shard, and Damsgaard. I don't know. I like Damsgaard a lot, but I think, I don't know. I've got worries about them. I think there's a lack of quality here. There's a lack of pace here, a lack of power here, and a lack of depth here. And that's not a great combination of things going into a game like this. Chelsea have got no such problems, of course. They've got the most ludicrous squad in all football. But they were poor against Fulham, as they were poor at home against Palace previously. And the West Ham game might be a bit of a false dawn because they played fine, but also West Ham were very poor and conceded, 3 corners? The goalkeeper threw a couple in. I don't know. I'm not fully confident on Chelsea just yet. And, of course, a couple of injuries to the likes of Cole Palmer. I think evident issues, considering they played through the summer as well. They're going to continue. Liam Delap pulling his hamstring last week, causing the whole Nicholas Jackson transfer deadline day nonsense. So there are some concerns there for Chelsea. They've got a lot of depth, but I think the team we saw start against Fulham was more or less what the manager wanted, and he had it for half an hour. Delap got injured, and we're retrofitting. I think that 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗲 looks fantastic. I think we're going to see not much rotation from the Fulham team beyond sort of Delap going out and one replacement coming in, maybe 𝗵𝐵𝗿𝐿𝐴, and kind of shuffle around what the front group is. But defensively also, they're a little bit weak. Tosin and 𝗀𝗏𝗏 is not the best defensive pairing in the league. That's a problem there as well. But they still have pace. They still have power. They still have goals. They still have rotation, and Brentford don't. And I'm struggling at the moment to justify a Brentford win. So go Chelsea at 1.73. Nice little group bet here. I like this week because it gives you a narrow win and a comfortable win together. So group bet of 3 scores, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 3.5. Very much early season covering my bases. The handicap market, not amazing. Chelsea at 1.5 was 2.88. I can see them winning 2-0. It feels like Chelsea will win reasonably comfortably. I'm struggling to see a Brentford goal. And of all the players, 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗏 first goal is 6. Who's going to score the first goal for Chelsea if not 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗏𝗏? So that's really, really good. Any time is 2.63. So Chelsea win and 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗏𝗏, that's a double your money bet.
Well, Patrick is also tipping this. Actually, Chelsea to win away and 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗏𝗏 to score. Jobs, Chelsea to win 2-0. Marco is the opposite. Both teams to score for this game. And we have 2 games left. On Sunday, Burnley, Liverpool. Before this, I want to ask you, do you think it's a good signing, Isaac, to Liverpool for this amount of money? Do Liverpool need Isaac?
I mean, I don't worry too much about the money. If they've got the money, they can spend the money. So, you know, that's sort of the way it is. They spent, was it $500 million or something? So well, if they've got it, spend it, fine. But do they need him? Yeah, I think so. I think you need someone like that if you're going to win the Premier League. 𝗵𝐿𝐴 has started well, but if you can throw a world-class attacker into this group in an 80-game season, yeah, of course they need him. They need everybody. Everyone needs him. Everyone needs Isak. Everyone needs 𝗵𝐿𝐴. Everyone needs Wirtz. Yep. This is how you win it. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are on the way to repeat the trophy. Indeed, with the win that we mentioned against Arsenal, they suffered. Perhaps they didn't deserve to win, but at the end they got the 3 points with this screamer by Szoboszlai. So 9 points, perfect start for them. Perhaps they didn't play great yet. Yeah, but again, 9 points. And Burnley, they were this close to get points from Old Trafford, 3-2 at the end in the standings. 3 points because they beat Sunderland at home. But I guess we should expect Liverpool to win. Not sure about the Asian handicap. Tom, if you would Asian handicap Liverpool, since they are coming from international break, since they are playing Champions League.
Yeah, that's my only concern. You're right to point that out. My only concern, we're not going for a huge Liverpool win, is because of the schedule and where the game has come and all that sort of stuff. I'm not impressed by Burnley. I haven't been impressed by Burnley. I wasn't majorly impressed by their performance at Man United. I thought a lot of that was down to the usual Manchester United deficiencies. I think the midfield of Lesley 𝗀𝐿𝐴 and Josh Cullen, 𝗀𝐿𝐴 is an injury waiting to happen in every single game. I think he went off last week. Josh Cullen is a perfectly acceptable championship player. So issues there in central midfield, issues in terms of creativity. You're relying on Jadon Anthony. I know he scored, but it's a championship attack. It's a championship midfield. It's a championship defense. And they've got an aging former Premier League goalkeeper in 𝗵𝗵𝗏. I think Kyle Walker probably could have given a penalty away in that game with that foul on Mason Mount, which I think was a foul that was overturned. So I've got issues with Burnley. I think they're going to struggle. I think they will go ultra defensive in this game and they'll get picked off by Liverpool. And there's not a great deal of threat on the counter. The only way to beat Liverpool is to overpower them and have threat on the counter. And maybe Anthony and Foster have got the pace to get in behind and take the chance when it comes. Maybe, but I'm not going to bet on that. In terms of Liverpool, my only concern about them remains centre-half. I think that 𝐿𝐴, I don't know if he is actually going to this game. I assume he's going to be all right, but obviously picked up a knock in the Arsenal game. But there's not a great deal of depth there. And there was a couple of moments in the game against Arsenal where Van Dijk and 𝗀𝗏𝗏 get caught out. Szoboszlai still filling in at fullback. Frimpong remains missing. I guess Connor Bradley might be fit by now. I haven't checked his fitness, but would you bring him in to replace Szoboszlai, who was man of the match both times he played right back? I don't know. But taking him out of midfield, I think, is a problem because I think he's probably their best player at the moment. So these are luxury problems to have for Arne Slot. Beyond centre-half, there are no issues. 𝐿𝐭𝐴, I think, comes into the squad but doesn't start because they're scoring goals and winning games. So why change the front group of 𝐿𝐴, 𝗂𝐿𝐴, Salah and Wirtz right now? And the only doubt maybe on Florian Wirtz is that he started slowly and he is struggling to come up to the pace of the Premier League at the moment and hasn't quite got the numbers yet. But I do think he'll come good if they decide to drop him out and bring Isak in to partner 𝗂𝐿𝐴 in a kind of 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2, whatever. That's not a bad position to be in. So, look, Liverpool win this game. 1.35 tells you that. They're big favourites. They're going to win comfortably. 𝗂𝐿𝐴 has started the season fantastically well. I know he didn't score against Arsenal, but scored in all the games before that. So, he'd be my top pick for goal scorer at 1.73 anytime. Dominik Szoboszlai been fantastic. Goal or assist for him in this game is 2.38. I do think you've got to look at the handicap because it's anyway going to make some money here. If they win 3-0, minus 2.5 goals is 3.25. 3-0 exact scoreline is 8.5. It's worth a little punt. I think that's worth a little punt. I think this will finish 2 or 3-0. I'm struggling to see a Burnley goal. So, yeah, I quite like that 3-0.
Well, some people think we might see goals from Burnley, so both teams to score, as we saw, for instance, in the first game against Bournemouth or against Newcastle, for instance. These games were both teams to score, and Liverpool struggled a little bit defending. 𝗀𝗲𝗄 sees 𝗂𝗂𝐿𝐴 scoring in this game. And the last game this match day, a lot of derbies, is another derby in Manchester, should I say. And we have United on top of Man City in the standings. Strange to see this, especially seeing how Man United are playing again. Another poor game against Burnley, just saved in the very end by a penalty scored by Bruno Fernandes. This time he didn't complain about the referee. And well, Man City with the same problems as last season. They looked in control of the game against Brighton. Perhaps they should have scored more goals, but they missed their chances and they don't control the games till the end. They suffer in defense. Therefore, they lost their second game of the season already. And I'm also curious to see Donnarumma as a goalie, especially with his feet work. I don't know. Guardiola always wants his goalkeepers to play a lot with the feet. And we all know how Donnarumma suffers both with the feet and also in set pieces.
I'm sad you didn't do that entire link as Noel Gallagher. That's a shame. I was enjoying that. Next week, next Man City game, we can do Gallagher's together. It'd be fun. Where were we? The game. That's it. Man City. Look, I think you pointed it out that the power in midfield is lacking. Rodri was fine last week against Brighton or 2 weeks ago, but is evidently going to need to get up to his Ballon d'Or winning pace. And I think the issue with Man City is quite simple, really. 3 or 4 years ago, when they were dominating the league, they had the best players in the Premier League. And the players they have brought in to replace the ones that have gone are not as good. It's about as simple as that, really. Like Kusanov at centre-half, is he as good as Laporte at his peak? I don't think so. Is Bernardo Silva the player he was 3 years ago? I don't think so. Is Marmoush, good player, Kevin De Bruyne? I don't think so. You know, is Reinders, what's a fair comparison? Gundogan? I don't think so. So, of the older team, Haaland, Rodri, Stones, great, that's still there. Of the new players, they're still really good players. Let's not go mad here. But they had an elite squad, the best squad, with elite cover in every position. And now it's Nico O'Reilly, it's Rico Lewis, it's Jeremy Doku, it's Ryan Aït-Nouri. Again, they're not bad players, but are they the best players in the league in every position as they were 3 years ago? And the answer is no. And that is sort of where we are. Right now, Guardiola is not working with the best players. And that makes it interesting. That makes, if they do win the league this year, I don't think they will, it makes it a really, really interesting story. And you mentioned it earlier on in the program. We spoke about Brighton. Brighton were able to make 4 changes and up the power. And City weren't. And that is a really, really interesting thing. But the positives are Haaland started the season well, scored in the loss against Brighton, scored 5 for Norway on Tuesday or whatever it was. I think Donnarumma is an improvement on Trafford. We can absolutely talk about it being a downgrade from Ederson, which I think it is, because of the amazing distribution that Ederson has brought over the years. But James Trafford, who, look, was fine against Brighton, he ain't going to be number one. Now Donnarumma's there. Simple as that. So I think it's an upgrade on him. So we'll see how that pans out. But there are concerns about City, as there are about Man United. They were poor against Burnley. Let's not sugarcoat this. It was a poor performance. The formation doesn't work. Hello, is this on? It doesn't work. The formation doesn't. Hello, it doesn't work. Ruben, but he's doing it again and again and again and again. Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in central midfield doesn't work. You've got to start 𝐿𝐵𝐵 in that midfield in front of Casemiro. He's not a replacement for Fernandes, as Amorim said. Or you drop Mount back in and you start 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿. They need power in central midfield, and Casemiro does not bring it at this point in his career. That's got to change. The back three, 𝐬𝐿, de Ligt and 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿. De Ligt had a great game opening weekend of the season, but struggled against Burnley. Lenny 𝐬𝐿 was perfectly fine footballer. I'm not sure he's a Premier League centre-half. Struggled a bit against Burnley. I guess it'll be 𝐵aYandir continuing in goal and not the new keeper. We'll find out what the scale is under Amorim, but I expect 𝐵aYandir. It's not good enough. And look, the front group, 𝗵𝗵, 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿, and I would hope 𝐶𝐻𝐿 by now in this game. They'll do some damage this season. And 𝗵𝗵 and 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿 will do some damage this season. I don't know how fit 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿 is. Obviously, we haven't seen him for a couple of weeks. Let's hope he's fit enough for this game. But if he's missing, that leaves you 𝗵𝗵, Mount and 𝐶𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿. I don't know. There's still a lot lacking at Man United. The squad still isn't quite there. And I think a new manager would come in and change this shape immediately and get better results. But there we are. My only doubt here is that United often raise their game in this particular match. They've got some good results in it over the recent history, which is surprising considering just how far ahead City have been in them in recent years. Beaten last December, wasn't it, at the Etihad? They beat them at the Etihad, the 2-1 victory. They beat them in May in the FA Cup. So they've got a decent record against them. So I don't discount that, but it's not something I'll put my money on. So take the City win at 1.73. The draw at 4.21 is really, really tempting because I can see this being quite a tight and taut game going in at 1 goal apiece. And Bruno Fernandes penalty and then Haaland scores a late leveller. Can see that in my mind's eye. If you go City, go both teams to score. That brings you to double your money. Man City to win 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. Group bet is 4.5. That feels very likely to me. And both score no draw, 2.25. I quite liked as well. I think there will be goals at both ends. Both a bit soft defensively. Both can score goals. And so I think that seems like a likely outcome. But I would just shade the City.
Well, our people are going for the draw, Tom. 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿, draw. 𝗏𝗏, draw. 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿, draw. Patrick, draw. So it's really good money, actually. Over 4. We saw last season a goalless draw at Old Trafford. So it would pay really, really good. Perhaps Man United sitting deep and trying to counterattack, and Pep with some issues. Well, this is it. Back from international break. Someone was commenting also that he's happy that the international break is over. I completely agree with you. I don't have fun watching England, Andorra, or actually I had fun watching Turkey, Spain, but that's it. Well, guys, it's your time to post your tips in Oddspedia. You can participate in our tipster competitions. Remember, you can win up to 1,000 euros. Free to participate, fun to enjoy. And we have rivals as well, where you can create your own tipster competition and challenge your friends. Now that you know Tom Rennie, you have more options to beat your friends, indeed. Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
I've got to apologise to our producer because I'm going to change it. Sorry, I'm going to change it, so I'm going to balls up the graphic. But I've got to do Liverpool. Why didn't I do Liverpool? Liverpool are going to beat Burnley this weekend. That is the safe bet. And I'm going to change it only because last 2 weeks I've got it wrong and I'm letting down the international ACCA. So I want it to be like Alvaro or Ronan that ruins it this week. So I said it was going to be Chelsea. I'm changing it. Well done. He's nailed it. Look at this. Pro.
Yeah.
Liverpool to win is the safe bet for me this week.
Our producer, David, is very quick. Reflex, listening to the show, and very quick hands to change the graphic and the ACCA, Tom.
3-team ACCA this week, of which both those teams are in there. So Liverpool going to win their game against Burnley. I do think Chelsea will beat Brentford. You put Arsenal to beat Forest in there as well. That comes in at a double your money. But I will just mention this. It's not going to be my ACCA, But if you go for an Everton win against Aston Villa and a West Ham win against Tottenham, which are unlikely scorelines, that was 8. So that's my ACCA that's going to come in. But I do have a spicy ACCA of a double that you could maybe do as well, which I'm going to put a $5 on. So I might be gloating next week, or I'll never mention this again.
Well, Tom, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Next week, we have the Champions League back. We have all the leagues, of course. So see you guys. Enjoy. Bye-bye.